President Buhari receives WTO DG. Improving Nigeria's standing in global trade dominates discussions.
Federal government to allocate 0.5% of Nigeria's GDP to research and innovation.
All researchers, inventors, and innovators who are participating in this expo to be steadfast, as the government has confidence that your results, your products and services will help make Nigeria a truly great nation.
Kaduna State government gives update on Bunangwari school abduction.
Following thorough checks, we can verify that no pupil was kidnapped.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss COVID-19 vaccination matters arising.
Now, prior to the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines in Nigeria, there has been anxiety as to the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. Claire?
Yes, but it seems that the dust surrounding the efficacy is gradually settling down as the government flagged off the administration of the AstraZeneca vaccine on frontline health workers at the National Hospital here in Abuja specifically.
And as a way of giving further assurance of the safety of the vaccine, the #1 citizen in the country, President Muhammadu Buhari, and the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, also received their jabs day after the official flag-off.
Now, members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, led by the Chairman and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, also took their turns to be vaccinated publicly, and that's in addition to strategic leaders as well as state governors.
And as a way to ensure that the critical targets for the administration of the vaccine have access to it, the federal government opened a portal for them to register for the vaccination.
And it's now about 11 days after that flag-off, and all states and the FCT have begun the COVID-19 vaccination. That's apart from one state, that's Kogi, which is expected to also reduce the spread of the virus in the communities.
However, more Nigerians are still skeptical about the COVID-19 vaccination, partly due to the short period for tests and trials, as well as possible effects of the vaccines, even though the health authorities and some Nigerian leaders attest to the safety of the vaccine.
So, in his own reaction, hours after taking the jab, President Muhammadu Buhari, in a statement by a senior special assistant on media publicity, Garba Shehu, said, and I quote, "I'd like to assure all citizens and to dispel fears and misconceptions about the safety of the vaccine administered on President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, senior advocate of Nigeria," end of quote.
And so what is the state of the COVID-19 vaccination across the country? What kind of side effects are reported from those and who received the vaccines? Is the level of confidence on the safety of the vaccination by Nigerians increasing following the administration of the jabs on the nation's leaders? How many states are yet to receive their own doses of AstraZeneca vaccine? What is the level of collaboration with NGOs to further sensitize Nigerians on the importance of accepting COVID-19 vaccines? These are some of our talking points as we discuss COVID-19 vaccination and matters arising. I am Juma Yusuf. Thanks so much for joining us.
And I am Claire Dilabo Abdurazak, welcoming you once again to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA.
Thanks for joining us. And to begin our conversation on COVID-19 vaccination, let's take this background report by Oyemi Ajayi.
5th March 2021 was the flag-off day for the COVID-19 vaccination in Nigeria. This comes after Nigeria had taken delivery of about 4 million doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. The frontline health workers were the first to be vaccinated, followed by the president and the vice president the following day. Vaccination was also given to members of the Presidential Task Force against COVID-19, where the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the Chairman of the PTF, Boss Mustafa, and some ministers received their jabs alongside some journalists. This sensitization was taken down to states where the governors led by example by submitting themselves to be vaccinated. However, the scare about the side effects of the vaccine has made many Nigerians question the safety of the vaccine. The scare emanated from the news that the vaccine is causing blood clots in the body of many, and this was part of the reasons some countries have objected purchase of the vaccines. But some government officials in charge of the vaccination insist that the batch of AstraZeneca vaccines brought into Nigeria are safe for use. Hence, Nigerians should submit themselves, as being vaccinated is a good step towards ridding the country of the virus.
The vaccine offers hope for a safe country free of coronavirus. I urge all state governments, traditional and religious leaders to take the lead in the mobilization effort within their environment and spheres of influence. I similarly urge all eligible Nigerians to present themselves and be vaccinated in accordance with the order of priority already mapped out at the various authorized designated centers only.
We are willing to take the vaccines in the public glare for every Nigerian to see, to attest to the fact that what is being offered is safe, is very effective, and it will help us in taming the spread of COVID-19.
As it is, COVID-19 cases in the country continually dropped as people adhere to the preventive measures against the virus in addition to the vaccine administration in the country. However, many remain adamant and skeptical about receiving the vaccine, especially with different theories around it. So, how best can the government convince the people about the safety of the vaccine? What are the health compromising challenges that comes with it? What collaboration or advocacy is needed to make Nigerians accept the vaccines? These are some questions guests will be answering on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
And indeed, Victor, those are very crucial questions, and our guests, I have no doubt, will try and give us answers to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And we are all set to go. Let me begin my introductions with Dr. Sage Hanire, Minister of Health. He's right here with us in the studio. Honorable Minister, good to have you with us, as always.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Also in the studio here with us, Dr. Faiza Shuaib, Executive Director and CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Always pleasure to have you with us, Doctor.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
We also have in the studio Dr. Tunji Funsho, Chairman, Nigeria Polio Plus Committee, Rotary International. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
And joining us from the United States via Zoom is Dr. Simon Agwele, virologist, vaccinologist, and head COVID-19 Task Force Team on Africa Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with the Minister. Welcome. AstraZeneca has been rolled out. Nigerians are excited about getting the vaccine, but there is a little bit of skepticism there. Can you tell us about it?
Well, there is always a groundswell of skepticism about vaccines. Even routine vaccines have always had trouble being given to all those who are supposed to have it. You know the difficulty we had with the polio vaccine. We had to bring traditional rulers and religious leaders and so on. That groundswell is there. But when you have a brand new vaccine, like the COVID vaccines are, the skepticism is even more. And the President and Vice President did very well to try to allay the fears of citizens by taking these vaccines openly. But the slightest reaction anywhere in the world will cause people to say, well, yes, I said so. So you will have that skepticism that will have happened, and the advice that we have received even from the World Health Organization this morning is that countries should continue using this vaccine.
I even think it's even more of fear than skepticism. But let me just start from the very beginning. I'm sure you've also had your own jab.
Yes, I have.
Any reaction?
I'm quite fine. I don't have any reaction, but I
No
know people.
No pain, no mild symptoms, nothing at all?
No, but I do know people who complain of pain here and weakness or aches, and then the day after they were okay, but I didn't have any symptoms.
I'd also like this question to go round. Dr. Faisal, same with you?
Yes, I mean, it was just a little bit of a pain when at the site of the inoculation, but that was it pretty much. Yes.
Dr.
Tunji.
Well, I've not yet had the opportunity of having the vaccine. I'm slated to have it done next week when I get back to Lagos. Yes.
Why won't you have it in Abuja?
This is a very systematic thing. It's organized. I'm not in the group that are supposed to have been vaccinated in Abuja. The Lagos State Primary Healthcare Development Agency is organizing our group in Lagos. And since I live in Lagos and I'll still need a second dose, it's much more logistically convenient for me to do it in Lagos.
From your designation, I want to believe you're among the frontline workers. So is it out of choice that you haven't had your own job, or is it by routine?
No, it's as far as frontline workers, are concerned, I'm not considered a frontline worker. As far as the current setup is concerned, I have no concerns whatsoever right now because I already have the vaccine on my face until such a time that I get the jab.
Okay, so Dr. Simon Agwai, we'll get to you and get your own reaction, whether you've had your jab or not. But let me get back again to the Honorable Minister. I've read some of your, statements, your remarks about the number of Nigerians that you have targeted to get the jab by the end of the year, by 2021. We'll say about maybe 40% of Nigerians, and by 2022, maybe about 70%. Now that the vaccines are here, how well are we doing so far?
We're doing well. The rollout has been very well organized. Those who are supposed to get the vaccines are getting it. And I've been watching very closely, and I see that the sort of hitches that we saw happen in some other countries, in some major countries, haven't happened here. It's going very smoothly compared to even what we saw in well-advanced and organized countries. Quite clearly because Nigeria has a institutional memory. We have a record of immunization from polio and routine vaccine initiative. So it's gone very well. We have no problems. Okay, no major problems, let us say.
Okay, Dr. Faisal Shaib, you're directly involved in this vaccination. Can you give us an estimated number of people that have been, vaccinated, in Abuja here and across the states? How is the acceptance there?
Right, so I don't have the exact figures for the FCT, as it were, but we have data for the national level. As of this morning, over 22,000 people had been vaccinated across the country. As of yesterday, if you recall, we had announced over 8,000 people. So we're still getting data, from different states. And we're not surprised that, we're getting these types of numbers because we've systematically categorized the different people who are going to be taking the vaccines. So right now we're giving the vaccines to frontline health workers who, of course, will be excited about coming to get a vaccine that will protect them as they go about their daily activities, right? And then we're looking at first responders, people in the security. So we believe that in the first phase, we'll see a rapid climb in terms of the number of people that are being reached. It's in the second phase and in the third phase is that we will now begin to see how the general population of Nigerians, namely those who are elderly, and then those who have comorbidities will come thereafter. But I think, just like the Honorable Minister has mentioned, we've taken the first foot right, and we're looking forward to a very successful campaign.
Isn't the media part of the frontline workers? We
Yes,
sit
absolutely.
down here every day, we go out to cover stories on COVID-19, and it's as if every time you people talk about it, it's as if the media is not included. Why?
No, the media is part of the frontline. There are people that also work in the frontline. But like I always say, even among people who are in the frontline, some are more frontline than others, right? And the people who are directly in touch, very close to cases of COVID-19 are the ones who are most at risk. And these are people who in the last 1 year have actually sacrificed. They've taken the risks on behalf of all Nigerians. It just makes sense that we should prioritize them in making sure that they get their jobs so that they can be protected, their families can be protected. And for those, even health workers who are not directly touching the patients, working with them, they can come, a few days later. The support staff who work with the frontline health workers also need to be prioritized above even those health workers who are in the offices, right? So it's a question of just a few days difference in terms of who gets the job first, who gets it second. But I'm sure that in the next couple of days, that frontline journalists will also get the opportunity. There are a lot of people who are in line to get their vaccines, and we know that even with the first batch of these vaccines of almost 4 million doses, that we're going to be able to cover all of our health workers, and then first respondents and people who are in the front lines will also get the opportunity to get the jab.
How active is the portal? Are people coming out?
Yeah,
to register?
people are registering, and we're seeing, just like we expected, that a lot of people that are not even supposed to be in the first phase are also excited, and they've gone to the portal and they've registered, and they've been asked to wait until it is their turn. But we're also mindful that in some parts of the country, our network is poor, right? And then there are Nigerians who may not be able to use, their handsets, their Android devices to do the registration. So for those category of Nigerians, we've also made the provision that when they come to the vaccination site, that they will get their registration done in situ, right? Mm-hmm. And then for those who also live in hard-to-reach areas, we have house-to-house teams that will also go eventually to get them registered. So we've had, different levels of people categorize Nigerians based on their, very unique circumstances, so that nobody is left behind when it comes to ensuring that they get the vaccinations.
I would come to the Honourable Minister, but let me still remain with you because primary healthcare is at the forefront of this process, the vaccination. So all 36 states but one have received their doses. What was the consideration for the number of doses given to each state? And in the process of getting the jab, what are the unique experiences that you have gotten from the different, categories of people who have received it?
Right. So, as it were, before we sent the vaccines out, we had to make sure that the states were ready for the vaccines in terms of their cold storage equipment, right? These are vaccines that require specific temperature requirements. So, as you're well aware, these vaccines are a premium. Even with your money, it's hard to get them because of the very short global supply. So Nigeria got one of the largest consignments of the vaccines, quite because of the population of Nigeria. And one thing that we've seen is that all across the states, when we did a rapid assessment, there were a few states that had issues with their cold storage. The Honourable Minister and the chairman of the COVID-19 subcommittee in the Nigeria's Governors Forum, the governor of Delta, spoke to some of these governors and they quickly closed the gaps. The only state that was not able to close the gap before we deployed the vaccine was Kogi State. And there was no way we were going to send vaccines to the cold store in Kogi State when we couldn't be sure that they will be kept potent. We cannot take the risk of keeping vaccines in an environment where the vaccines will become denatured. You might recall that during the NSARS crisis, that the cold store of Kogi in Lokoja was vandalized. So the state government has not repaired that cold store. So that cold store is not in a situation where it can store the vaccines. This is the reason why we've not taken the vaccines to Kogi State. But we're in touch with the Ministry of Health and the State Primary Healthcare Board, and I understand that they are trying to fix that cold store. So as soon as they're able to do that, we'll send them the vaccines. So moving to the issue of specific experiences of some of the individuals who have taken the vaccines. So like with any vaccine, there are those who are going to have some side effects, and the typical side effects are pain and swelling around the site. There are people who have body pains and then a little bit of fever. These mimic the actual disease, as it were. So it's more of a very it's more of a way of
see how she looked at you.
Of course.
Right, exactly. So yeah, there are people who will get some of those side effects, but those are normal side effects. So these are, for people who have kids, when you take your kid for shots, it's one of the challenges that mothers will say, oh, the child had a fever. It's part of the body's immune response. These types of symptoms are not so huge as to discourage people from wanting to take the vaccines. And once they occur, there's a med safety app that people should report such adverse events. There's also the opportunity to report to the health facility if you have these side effects. But these are side effects that last only a few hours, usually a day. And once they occur, you should report. It is part of your body's response to make sure that you generate enough immunity so that when the actual disease, the actual virus affects you, your body is prepared, to dissipate the virus as soon as possible. So it is part of the normal response. It's not something for you to be scared about. There are instances, there are rare instances, of course, when people have some reactions, that are unexpected, right? And usually, because these are so rare, the system is set up to investigate if this happens. As far as we're concerned, with over 20,000 people vaccinated so far in Nigeria, we've not seen those severe adverse reactions. And that gives us a lot of confidence that these vaccines work for Nigerians, and Nigerians should come out en masse to take the vaccines.
I'm scared because, I saw somebody sent in his reaction to the vaccine yesterday. A journalist, Kazim Ubadogo, he actually said that after going through all the reactions, fever, shaking, headache, and all that, he said he got to know that the side effects of AstraZeneca vaccine are pain or tenderness at the injection site, headache, tiredness, muscle, joint aches, fever, chills, and nausea. That was what he experienced himself when he took it in Lagos when Governor Sanu Olu was getting his jab. He just felt, okay, let me just get it. But say by the time he got home, it was really, really bad. But
yeah, people have different reactions to to medicines, just like vaccines, right? There are people who will not touch particular medicines just because it doesn't suit them. And this is why that provision is made, that if you've experienced any side effects, you should report. Just like the Honorable Minister, myself, we had a little or no reaction to the vaccines, right? So that is something that is individualized, right? And it doesn't generalize that everybody is going to have the same reaction like this journalist. It's just like how some people will not eat shellfish, or they will not eat
periwinkle.
Absolutely, yeah. It depends on that individual. But in the end, the most important thing is the risk-benefit ratio. Maybe he has a mild reaction, right, to the vaccine. If he were to come in contact with the virus, maybe he will be dealing with severe disease or even death, right? So this is what science does, to weigh the risk, you know, in terms of benefits, and take a decision on what is good for the individual and the population.
Okay, let's put you on hold. We'll talk more about those effects that Jumaine has mentioned. But let's bring in Dr. Tunji Funsho. Dr. Funsho, you're chairman Nigeria Polio Plus Committee. That's of Polio International. I mean Rotary International. What are the specific roles of Rotary, within this implementation process?
Thank you very much. We are in continuous dialogue with the Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Our main strong point is our advocacy potential, which we have deployed towards changing minds and perceptions about the oral polio vaccine. We are strategically positioned for advocacy because Rotary is present in every nook and cranny of this country. And we have access to political leaders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, and also the community in which we live and operate, as Rotarians in clubs. So that is our strong point. The other strong point is this is a neutral voice. It is not government. It's not, the vaccine, producers. Rotarians are Muslims and Christians and Hausas and Igbos and Yorubas and Kanuris and so on. So we bring, to the plate the opportunity to reach people who know us and we know personally, and who will listen to us and trust what we tell them. And so this is one major area that we have been dialoguing on a regular basis. Yesterday, for instance, we had a meeting with the Director General of the Nigerian Governors Forum to start our advocacy efforts to the governors, because work is at state level predominantly.
Let me just quickly chip in. I'm sorry. Let me just quickly chip in. Now that we've established that you are the non-aligned partner in this whole process, what is the content and context of your advocacy, and to whom really?
Well, fundamentally, the content has been mentioned, and it's fundamentally that the vaccine is safe and the vaccine is efficacious. I think one of the things that we don't put out there sufficiently is the rigorous process it takes to get a vaccine on the market. Until recently, that science had made, using fractions of a vaccine like, the messenger RNA, possible to bring vaccines out in a short period of time. Vaccines take up to 10 years to develop, from laboratory, tests to animal testing to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. And these are not something that are done in the dark. They are done, under the purview of independent experts who, number one, set out the ethics of doing those trials and also examine the details of the outcome of those trials. And it's only then that the expert committee will recommend to WHO to give licensing to a vaccine, or any drug for that matter. As it were now, most of these vaccines are under emergency license use, which is the step before the final licensing. So it's a very rigorous process, and we need to put this out there. Let me give you an example. With the Covid19 vaccine, as of the end of last year, there were 200 vaccine candidates. In other words, vaccines in development. Out of those, only 52 survived to go to clinical trials. And as of December last year, only 7 vaccines have emergency use licensing. So vaccines are not things that just come out overnight. There's a rigorous process, and there's a very high mortality rate for vaccine candidates. I think if people are aware of that, then they'll realize that all these side effects we're talking about, they have been seen and they have been assessed at the clinical trial level, such that before licensing is given, the ED has said, the risk-benefit analysis is done, and you weigh that against whatever decision or whatever advice you're going to give, to the governments, who will now decide based on those facts. Is it good for our people or is it not? We believe, on the available evidence that the vaccine we have now is efficient and it is safe. So that is the message of our advocacy. And like I said, because of the trust we have engendered in the people we interact with in the process of this advocacy, we are likely to be able to dispel, some of these negative perceptions of vaccine, particularly the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Tunji Fonsho. Let's now go to our Zoom network where Dr. Samuel Aguele is standing by. You've heard the opening statement of our guest in the studio. AstraZeneca vaccine is here in Nigeria, but people are, sort of saying that they're afraid to get it. They've been reassured that it is okay to get it, but across the world, we read in our newspaper review this morning that some countries are stepping down the use of AstraZeneca vaccine. Earlier in Nigeria, when we spoke with you earlier, some months back before the vaccine came, there was talk about Pfizer and biotech, vaccine coming to Nigeria. Then all of a sudden it's AstraZeneca. How is it working where you are, and what do you think Nigerians need to do to, enlighten us on the potency and efficacy of the AstraZeneca vaccine?
Well, thank you very much for having me. The last speaker, Dr. Fonso, spoke very well that vaccine development is not a trivial issue. There are all kinds of oversights. I mean, if you want to make a vaccine, it starts from exploratory and then preclinical testing, and that is peer-reviewed. And then once you finish your animal studies, you have to submit your dossier to the regulatory agency and then the ethics committee. The ethics committee will weigh the risks and benefits and then give the go-ahead for the trial to be conducted. And then the regulatory agency, also based on the data that you submit, we give you go-ahead to do human trials based on the safety data that you already have in animal studies. So, and that is why phase 1, you have to recruit few people because you want to see whether the safety that you got in animals will be replicated in humans. And then once you establish that, you move to phase 2 trials, where you recruit more people, and then you look at the dosage and safety, and then phase 3 trials where you look at the efficacy of the vaccine, whether the immune response that you have generated will protect against the infection. And once you do that, then you submit that dossier to the regulatory agency. Here in the US, you submit to FDA. But during this process, you have all kinds of oversights, like the Data and Safety Monitoring Board. All these organizations are independent, and they have the powers to stop the trials at any time, including the volunteers themselves, because the volunteers will have to sign a consent form, and then in that form, willingly, during the trials, if they are not satisfied, they can withdraw. This thing. So once you submit that biological license document to the regulatory agency, based on the phase 3 clinical data, they give you approval, in this case for COVID, emergency use authorization. And then all these participants are still being followed. That is the pharmacovigilance. All the participants, in all these clinical trials will be followed for the next 2 years. One of the things is we want to see whether this, the product will be safe during this period, and then how long will this protection last? Because that question has not been answered yet. We don't know when we will need a booster dose, how long this immune response will last. In the case of flu, you have to make the vaccines every year. So these are questions that will be answered during these 2 years. Then coming to AstraZeneca. Now, like the executive secretary of primary health said, it was a decision that AstraZeneca took that we don't want to make profit during the pandemic. And that is why the AstraZeneca vaccine is cheap. And that was why the COVAX facility focused on that vaccine for the developing world. Look at the characteristics of that vaccine, for example. Over 12 million people in the UK have taken that vaccine. Apart from the side effects that the ES enumerated, there's no really adverse events that will make us to stop implementing that vaccine in Nigeria. Now, if you look at the overall data, forget about the 95% Pfizer, 94% Moderna, and so on. These trials were not done head to head. They were done in different populations and so on. So you cannot say this vaccine is better than that vaccine and so on. So generally, the AstraZeneca vaccine efficacy was shown to be about 63%. And then if you look at the original strain, which is the Chinese strain, the Yuan strain, the efficacy is about 79%. Then if you give a second dose, then the efficacy goes to about 82%. But when the trial was done in South Africa, because the epidemic in South Africa is due to a strange virus, that we call it now the South African strain. The efficacy was 22%, and that was why South African said, well, this is not a good vaccine for us. But again, it was not established, because the COVID vaccine is not just to protect against the infection, but to protect against death. So that study was not done there. So let's not think, and that is why I am suggesting that the implementation right now in Nigeria should be like phase 3B trials, so that we generate all these data. For example, the safety of the data, the immunogenicity of the data, if we have breakthrough infections, what are these viruses that are having this breakthrough infection, and whether the people that will have this breakthrough infection will have symptoms and then they will die from the disease or not. So there is a primary outcome and then secondary outcome. This is what we need to see. Now, talking about the safety of COVID vaccines, as you know, about 60% of Israelis have been vaccinated against COVID-19. So far, there's reduced, the efficacy in terms of preventing death is about 99%. Now, in the US, for example, 70 million people have received the first dose, and 36 million people have received the second dose. The rest of the world, outside the US, 220 million people have been vaccinated, have received their first dose. That is in a population of about 8 billion people. We should be concerned about supplies, not about whether the vaccine is safe. The vaccine has gone through all kinds of rigorous processes for it to be out there to be implemented. But the worry is, how do we get these doses? And I'll be happy to talk about that, allow other people to speak over. Thank you.
Dr. Agwali, thank you. I also know that in some of your interviews the interviews you granted to some newsmen. You've also praised, the implementation strategy put in place by the, health authorities here in Nigeria. But we're having to deal with concerns about safety. There are fears about the efficacy of specifically the AstraZeneca vaccine. And you yourself did say that this vaccine that we have now only deals with the original variant. So can you speak more about that to us?
Good question. All the vaccines that we have, whether it's Pfizer, it's Moderna, is Johnson & Johnson, is AstraZeneca, they are all based on the original strain. Now, whatever characteristics that any of these vaccines exhibits, it's possible that all the other vaccines will exhibit the same thing. There's an article that was published 2 days ago in Nature. It shows clearly that all these first-generation vaccines we protect against the original strain, and then there is reduced protection against the variants. It doesn't stop them from protecting against the variants, but there's reduced protection against the variants. But there are some variants that escape the immune response completely. So definitely, there is the need for a second-generation vaccine. Already, Moderna has made a second-generation vaccine based on the South African strain. The clinical trial has started by the U.S. National Institute of Health. My team here, we're also working on this, the South African strain, because that is the strain that has been shown to escape the current immune response induced by these vaccines. So you see, the issue, science will address all these issues. Whether you have two variants, three variants of concerns and so on, it's easy for us to put these vaccines together and have a multivalent vaccine to protect against this. My worry is, how do we manufacture the vaccines to get to Africa? Let me give you an example. Now, Nigeria got only 4 million doses of vaccine for 200 million people. We don't know when the next dose will come. The US president just invoked a Defense Production Act that gives him power to allocate resources to this company. And he has given the mandate to Merck and Johnson & Johnson to partner so that they will produce more vaccines. Even the CEO of Serum Institute in India is saying this is going to affect our production. And that is where we are depending on to get our vaccines. So the bottom line, and what I'm saying is that let the government do the same. The Defense Production Act is to promote local manufacturing so that they will have enough doses here in the US. And that's why the president is confident that by the 1st of May, every American that needs the vaccine will get it. So we need to, the government needs to, there are two companies in the country, for example, that are working to produce vaccines locally. The government needs to sit with these people and say, how can you produce produce COVID vaccines for us? What do you need? What are the issues? And discuss this, and then we get this addressed. And because now, with this issue, once the second generation vaccine is produced, it's the same facility that will be used to produce that. And we have not gotten the first generation vaccine yet. So now the same facilities are going to be used to produce the second generation vaccine. So when we look at the first generation vaccines and then think about the second generation vaccine, WHO has discussion on Wednesday to discuss this issue, to encourage countries in Africa to focus on local vaccine manufacturing, because they are seeing that there's no way that we can address this issue without local vaccine manufacturing. This is what we need to be discussing.
So, Simon Agwele, thank you so much for that. Honorable Minister, I'm coming to you on that. The last time we spoke, that was when 10 billion was released, to the Ministry of Health, for vaccine, supporting vaccine production, in Nigeria, exploring vaccine production by our local, manufacturers. I was thinking, out of 54 countries in Africa, why are we still waiting for vaccine to come from the West?
Well, we get vaccines even for routine immunization from outside the country. And the polio vaccines we got to take us to the polio-free status we are now, also came from importation. Now, the vaccine industry in Nigeria, which was in Yaba, went comatose several years ago, like many things in the country, when we, at the period where we thought we were rich enough to buy everything we needed from abroad, and we didn't need to make anything, when we were even importing food. And as you sometimes hear His Excellency the President say, we were even importing toothpick. So at that time, we thought we could buy everything. And now the reality has come that for our population, we can't buy everything. We need to join the world in being productive, in productivity. And there are efforts to restart everything. This government started that effort to restart our refineries, which are also comatose, the steel mills, which are comatose, aluminium, paper mills, everything has went to sleep. So we in the Ministry of Health also started to revive the vaccine production, and we went into a partnership with a private company, and that process is just taking off. We're just trying to get the infrastructure, preparing first of all to join in producing routine vaccines, the ones that are used normally for routine immunization. That process requires a technology transfer, and all of that was going on when COVID came in. So now we have to divert. Now COVID is totally new, and you know that even very experienced manufacturers had a difficult time. The earliest, the shortest period it's taken to produce vaccines was 4 years, and that was mumps. The others, as you hear just now, took much longer. Now you needed a lot of resources, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge and practice to have been able to produce a vaccine against COVID in 1 year. Definitely that was not something we could have joined in, because we are just reviving our own vaccine production for routine immunization. And but we do have scientists who have worked on producing vaccines. We have candidates, we have at least 2, and who have to go through the phase of clinical trials. Now that would cost a lot of money, and the first estimate we have is that it will cost up to more than $1.5 million US dollars to go through the phases of clinical trials before you start thinking of production. That should take you at least a year to go through all those phases. Are we going to wait a year? No. So we have to look for vaccines while looking for investors to support that phase of trial that will take you to a position where you can now produce. Because getting the vaccine ready and then handing over to an industry that produces, there are 2 different things. One is in a laboratory, and the other one goes into the mainstream production. So we are working on indigenous vaccines. Yes, we are working on that. We're trying to find sponsors for clinical trials, 1, 2, 3. But in the meantime, we have to get our people vaccinated. So we have to work on 2 tracks.
Okay. So are we only depending on the AstraZeneca? Will other vaccines come in?
We are looking at everything, because what you have seen in the world now is a scramble for vaccines. Every country wants vaccines. And there are people who are under the illusion that if you have money, you can go there and say, I want vaccines, and you go home with it. That's not the way it works. You'll be given 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year before you come. And what has happened is that a group like COVAX has done what they call pool pooling. If I come to you and say, look, I'm going to buy 100 million, you are likely to take me more serious than a small country that comes and says, I want to buy 10,000. So the pooling pool purchasing is the way to go. And we also joined the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team, which is doing the same thing, doing a pool procurement for all African countries, and with making orders, large orders. You hope you can get better attention. And we're looking at a series of vaccines. Now, the African portal gives us 4 vaccines. 4. There's the Pfizer, there is the Johnson & Johnson, there's AstraZeneca, and then there's the Sputnik, which is made in Russia. Now, NAFDAC here in Nigeria has to validate all of these for us. WHO also does the same thing, they validate. And even the African Union does the same thing. So the NAFDAC has validated AstraZeneca. So that's the only one that Nigeria has authorized so far. We are waiting for the results of the others. And once we have those results, we can also now place order with AVAT in Addis Ababa and say we're looking for these vaccines.
Okay, thank you. In other words, let me again go back. In terms of having to produce our own locally produce our own vaccine, that is still being looked into while we try to protect, the larger community against COVID-19. Dr. Agbali has raised concerns about having, new variants, the emergence of new variants, which evade the vaccine protection. There's a South African variant, there's a Nigerian variant, there's a Brazil variant, and most of Italy has just shut down. Brazil is going through a tough time. What we have now is AstraZeneca, which is made to deal with the original variant. Are we in trouble? Are we in any difficulty? Because how long will it take for us, to get the booster that would be able to deal with the new variants?
Well, we're not so very anxious about that because the production in all these areas is ramping up. AstraZeneca is produced in several sites, not just in the UK, it's produced in Belgium, and I think South Korea, even in China too, and in India. We get ours from India. Serum Institute of India is the largest producer of vaccines in the entire world. So they are able to do a lot of mass production and supply, but they also need to supply their own neighborhood, all the countries around them in Asia, and supply us too. So because we have many tracks, we are watching what the AVAT will give us and what COVAX will give us. They promised us 16 million this year, so we are expecting another batch very soon, at any time now. So we are not too anxious about when we are going to get the next one. We believe it will come in good time, and if not from the AVAT, but from the COVAX. But also the fact that we can also have let's say, portfolio of vaccines that we are using here. We want to settle down on a number that we are going to focus on to vaccinate our citizens. But we do have confidence that it's going very well as it is now.
Okay, Dr. Shayab, I'm just concerned. I'm just curious. Of all the vaccines that are in use now all over the world, the Modernas and the Pfizers, why is it only AstraZeneca that is having issues of efficacy and safety?
I wouldn't say that it is only AstraZeneca that's having issues around safety and efficacy. Even before NAFDAC approved AstraZeneca, if you remember very clearly, there were many instances where people said, oh, there were issues with the Pfizer vaccine as well.
With storage?
Well, apart from storage, there are people that had side effects. If you're talking about side effects are common with any biological product. The question is whether those side effects are mild. And then when you look at the risk-benefit analysis, right? On the whole.
The recent data says over 40 people have reported blood clot and bleeding.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. Always, the question that scientists ask is whether you are providing protection when you give a vaccine or not, compared to the severity of the disease. That's the first thing that you have to ask. Now, if you look at what's happening in the United States, as a result of their vaccination program, you can see how their cases are going down. So vaccines work.
But they haven't authorized emergency use of AstraZeneca.
That is under review, right? Exactly. That's under review.
Yes.
Right. That's under review. Now, the point is that first and foremost, we need to accept the fact that vaccines are perhaps the most important public health intervention that we've ever seen globally. That's number one. Now, when you talk about the issues of safety and efficacy, as long as a vaccine can give efficacy of 50% and above, then that vaccine is good enough to protect against any condition. So all the discussions about, AstraZeneca is just 66%, why are we using AstraZeneca? When you take the first dose, you're talking about as high as 66%. But if you delay giving the second dose for as long as 12 weeks, like we are doing in Nigeria, then the immune response approaches 90%. What is the difference between 90% and 94%? Precious little when it comes to the public health significance of the vaccine. Now, if you talk about the countries, European countries that are pausing the use of AstraZeneca. Now, we need to be very careful about the words that are being used. I see, some media houses are confusing the pause with halt. When you say halt, that means you've stopped it. When you say you're pausing,
suspension.
Yeah, yes.
No, because
exactly.
actually they said, let me read it again. AstraZeneca fair, vaccination suffers setback. 5 more countries halt exercise.
And in the small print, what did they say?
Spain, Germany, France, Italy, Holland, pause rollout.
Pause, exactly. So halt and pause are not the same, right? So in the large print, there was the screaming headline, it's a halt.
Yeah.
But what the governments of those countries have also said is that these are precautionary measures. There is no direct cause and effect that they've established between this vaccine and the clotting disorders that have been reported. So they are at the point where they are still investigating. The European Medical Agency also points out clearly that the rates of clotting that has been observed in these European countries following vaccinations with AstraZeneca is not larger than usual. It's not larger than what happens in the general population, right? So it will be hasty to state that there is a direct link between the vaccine and the clotting disorders. The World Health Organization has come out very clearly too to say that so far, based on the assessment that have been made, there is no causal link between AstraZeneca and the blood clotting. Now, if there was, I want to assure you that the Presidential Task Force and the Federal Ministry of Health will have taken immediate action to stop the use of AstraZeneca if there was any shred of evidence that there was a link.
Did we certify this our own, or did we rely on data and statistics given by the WHO and other health institutions?
It makes sense that when you have a global body of experts reviewing the data, the dossiers, many months, very rigorous process of clinical trials, that you rely on the information from those clinical trials. That's exactly why they were done, to provide body of evidence on the safety of the vaccines. And thousands of people took these vaccines, and they are doing very well. None of them has died. None of them has suffered severe side effects. These people who went through, we're talking about 30,000, 40,000 people that went through these clinical trials, are still alive. But even beyond that, over 20 million doses of the vaccine has been had, of AstraZeneca vaccine has been had. Clearly, if there is any indication that there might be an issue, yes, those countries have taken the right step in saying, wait, let us see if there's something wrong with this particular batch of vaccines. Now, they're not saying that it's every batch of vaccine that is involved. There's a particular batch known as the ABV 5300 batch. And that is the one that they are looking at. Even with the process of assessing that batch, they have not established a link. It is a function of science that you link cause and effect before you take a decision, right? So it's just like if you take a meal that has maybe stayed overnight and then you start throwing up, right? You will start thinking, okay, what happened? Why am I throwing up? Then you will start being the investigator. Exactly. So, oh, this must be food poisoning because I ate food from last night.
But it's sweeter.
Right? Well, you can say that, right? But the fact of the matter is that there is a cause and effect here, right? And you know that on a regular basis, on a regular basis, you don't have food poisoning. There's a specific reason. Now, in much the same way, right? There's a random observation that somebody who took the vaccine had blood clots. Blood clotting happens rarely, but it does happen in individuals. What these agencies are looking at is there any link whatsoever between the two? What a number of advisors and committees that have assessed the situations from a preliminary point of view have indicated is that there's likely to be no link, especially when you look at the numbers, right? There's likely to be no link. And for us at the Presidential Task Force and the Federal Ministry of Health, we're working very closely with all of these agencies, listening and getting information from them, right? At the same time, the NCDC, NAFDAC, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency are working on a protocol that will continue to monitor long after people have started the vaccinations to make sure that if there's any untoward effect, we're able to get it. NAFDAC is also monitoring all the side effects that people are mentioning around the AstraZeneca vaccination. And where we see that there are unusual symptoms, unusual signs, then we will assess such symptoms and signs. And if the indication is that there might be a direct cause between the vaccination and any untoward effect, I'll assure you that the role of NAFDAC as a regulatory entity is to take a decision after advising the Federal Ministry of Health.
Okay, sure. Let's put you on hold and take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at other, concerns that Nigerians have raised with regards to the COVID-19 vaccine. Don't go away. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be right back.
Yeah, welcome back, and this is still Good Morning Nigeria. We're talking about COVID-19 vaccination and matters arising. But before we continue our conversation, Nigerians are also joining the conversation through their tweets. We'll be taking our tweets now. Nai tweets, I am very, very ready to get a jab of the vaccine, but due to the limited quantity, I doubt it will get to my community. I don't know where your community is, actually. Yes.
Well, Suleiman today says, aside some other European nations, Germany and Ireland have just suspended the use of AstraZeneca vaccine because of blood clot. What is Nigeria waiting for?
And Musa Bedlosani, the efficacy of the vaccine is questionable, as some countries are stopping the injection of the vaccine because it is causing blood clot. I believe Dr. Faisal Shaib, really dealt with that area and sort of explained it to us.
Ahmed Mohammed said there are many conspiracies surrounding COVID-19, from its emergence to tests to treatment. Vaccination cannot be left out, and until proven to be safe, many Nigerians cannot accept it.
Omogbala and Babs, as Nigeria prepares the nation for the vaccination, other countries like Iceland, Netherlands and others are putting a stoppage to its use. The question then arises, is there something WHO is not telling the world? Is there any conspiracy around COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, first is Akiboyewa. I had the Oxford vaccine while my wife had the Pfizer vaccine, and we barely had any reaction. Out of 24 million people that have been vaccinated in the UK, over 17 million people had the Oxford vaccine, and only 40 people experienced serious side effects. Nigerians who want to leave should be vaccinated. Some European countries were too hasty to suspend the use of the vaccine because the blood clots by about 30 people in Europe may not be connected to a vaccine.
And Ahmed Jibrin, I have convinced my neighbor to agree for the jab. Unfortunately, however, he was the first person to share the news of the suspension of the AstraZeneca by some European countries. He's thinking twice again.
But I hope Ahmed Jibril has also taken his own jab.
Hope he got his jab too.
All right, Mike, I have tweets. COVID-19 vaccination is the way to go to reducing and stamping out the pandemic, such as the virus has been going down tremendously in USA since they started vaccination. We must fast-track the supply and vaccination in the country. The vaccine should not be wrongly seen as exclusively meant for VIPs only.
And Sammy tweets, not interested in their $4 vaccine.
Okay, Josiah Odiali tweets, if European countries which are more developed than us are thinking twice, Nigerians should think twice. There are reports of deaths about these vaccines. It's high time African and especially Nigerian pharmacists develop indigenous vaccines. We can save ourselves.
Continue, Claire.
Law Alpha C. Unfortunately, many Nigerians have bought into the conspiracy theory that a vaccine has dire health side effects, including reduction of male fertility, that the jabs administered on government officials are different from the ones for the masses. Adequate sensitization and mobilization is required to convince many Nigerians to go out there and get vaccinated from coronavirus, because there are many conspiracy theories trailing the availability and genuineness of the vaccine.
And Chris Simon tweets, WHO and other relevant agencies had carried investigation and proved that the COVID-19 vaccination is okay. Now, why people come out with insinuation that the vaccine, Oxford AstraZeneca, is causing blood clotting? Does it have side effects?
Dele Jack Solomon, based on research, the vast majority of respondents in Nigeria declared they would agree to be vaccinated if a COVID-19 vaccine is approved and available for free. Now, the onus is on the federal government to order the vaccine in large quantities so as to ensure large-scale coverage. Thank you all for your tweets, and that's what we're trying to do here. We've got all the health experts here in the studio, and of course, Dr. Wali joining us from the U.S. to explain to us what's going on, whether it's coincidence that those who have shown, side effects, or has to do with safety. But from all indication, most people that have taken the jab, say it's just the normal feel you get from, being vaccinated. So let me bring in Dr. Funshaw. Earlier on, I asked you, I wanted to know what, feelings you're getting from the people in the process of, carrying on your advocacies. What are the concerns that people have raised about the vaccine?
Well, I think it's the same concerns that, have been so far expressed during our discussion so far in the last hour or so. I think it is important to put things in perspective. If you take the figures from the United States have, lost, 500,000 people to COVID-19. If, as they plan, by the middle of the year, all Americans are protected against COVID-19, It means that in 1 year, because of the vaccine, America will have protected the lives of 500,000 of their citizens. Now put that in the perspective of the side effects. The serious side effects that have been reported in the United States as a result of COVID-19, not deaths, just serious side effects, is less than 200. Now, trade 200 non-life-threatening side effects to the lives of 500,000 people. And we can see that the benefits far, far outweigh the inconvenience of major side effects. We have not, as far as I know, recorded one death due to COVID-19 vaccine. United States already has gone beyond 100 million vaccinations for COVID-19. No deaths have been recorded. So it is very important for us to put it in that perspective. The second thing I would like to mention is the issue of, AstraZeneca has a lot of side effects, Pfizer hasn't. That is not the case. Pfizer vaccine has also recorded major serious side effects to their vaccine. The only thing that has not happened is any documented case of blood clot. But the blood clot we're talking about is insignificant. 30 to 40 blood clots as against 17 to 20 million lives saved. Look at it again in the terms of cost benefit. So I want to appeal to us, and this is what I tell those I'm advocating to look at the benefits of saving lives as against the risk that is really infinitesimal. If you take the figures of lives saved to the figures of those who did not lose their life but suffered the inconvenience of major side effects, which are very, very few. I want to buttress this by, mentioning the fact that even food causes some of these serious side effects we're talking about. My second son, for instance, even if inadvertently he takes mushroom, he's going to end up in emergency room in a hospital because his lips will swell. He finds difficulty in breathing because of swelling around his throat, and he needs special injections and oxygen to get over it. So we must be aware that these are in the normal course of events, that this will happen. And as far as AstraZeneca is concerned, I wish to reiterate what the ED has said. There has not been an established cause-effect relationship. The government have said they are pausing. If somebody says he's pausing, it means there is a chance that they are going to resume. And of course, I know one of the countries is already saying they expect to resume in about 2 weeks' time. So those things are expressed to us, the fear that they will get major side effects, but then the other major risk they face is death from COVID-19 if they don't get protected, by the vaccine.
Okay, as partner, in creating awareness for COVID-19 and vaccination, you've gone to the nook and crannies of Nigeria. Is it just smooth sail? Didn't you have any challenges?
Well, the main challenge again is the challenge of those who have had too much of the negative news about the vaccine that are now reluctant to take the vaccine. I have a friend who is willing to take the vaccine, but the wife is not willing to take the vaccine. And we're in the process of trying to change those minds. It is very, very difficult when you are, fed with information that threatens your life and you don't take it seriously. It takes a while. Eventually, I'm sure she's going to, succumb to our plea and see the evidence. I think the thing is that we need to be armed with enough information, not only about the AstraZeneca vaccine, but also the rival vaccines, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna or Sputnik vaccine. We need to arm ourselves with information about how they are performing in the field, so we can assure people that the risk is about dying from COVID-19 or suffering some minor side effects. Even so far, like I said, the major side effects have not led to a single death. Okay. So what will you choose?
All right, thank you, Dr. Tunji Funsho. Dr. Agwale, obviously, Nigeria's preoccupation at the moment is to achieve herd immunity, while also working on, developing our own local vaccine. I'd like you to quickly, we have very few minutes. I'd like you to take two questions. I'd like to know what your task force team on Africa vaccines is doing with regards to that. That's production of, an African vaccine. Secondly, how might Nigeria be able to bridge the supply gap, to achieve the 140 million doses of vaccination, to protect the larger community. How do we bridge this supply gap in view of the fact that we are not looking at producing our own local vaccines at the moment?
Well, the minister is right. It takes a while to build these capabilities, but you will never know what people are working on if you don't engage them in discussion. So this is what we have been doing for over 15 years. We need to discuss and see how we can get that out of the way. Now, if you are even talking about supplies, like I said, we know the factories, we know the capabilities, we know the number of doses that these factories are able to produce. The importance of having, and this is why we are pushing not only Nigerian to make sure that we have regional vaccine manufacturing. Except that is done, we are wasting time. Whatever thing we want to resolve in the short time, it's a waste of time. I mean, you have 4 million doses of the vaccine now. You don't know when next you are going to get the remaining 14 million. All that is going to come from Serum Institute. Why is Serum Institute getting the license from these manufacturers to produce for the developing world? AstraZeneca license to Serum Institute, Novavax, which is a company here in the US, that their vaccine is based on, has about 80% efficacy. Also licensed to Serum Institute because they have the manufacturing capabilities to produce the vaccines. So you have, first of all, to have the manufacturing capability, and then you will not be able to attract, when you talk about intellectual property and all that, that is garbage. The first thing is you have to have the capacity to produce the vaccines, and these things happen naturally. So without local vaccine manufacturing, there's no way, I can tell you now, you can quote me anytime, that we'll be able to achieve that herd immunity. I gave you a simple example of the variants that we have now. Soon, we'll find out that we're going to have a lot of breakthrough infections. And these breakthrough infections will be due to these variants. Now, here in the US and the West, it's not an issue. Vaccines have already been made against these variants. Clinical trials are already ongoing at the US National Institute of Health. And once the trials, of course, the trial is not going to be as cumbersome because we already know that the vaccine works. So it's not going to be as cumbersome as the first generation vaccine. So when that happens, all these manufacturing facilities will now focus, because vaccine market, 60% of vaccine market, 60 to 70% of vaccine market is here in the US. So most of these factories will now focus on producing that second generation vaccine, who is going to even produce the first generation vaccine for you. So these are the issues, these are the things that we need to be discussing. And these are the facts. Now, implementation is, the primary healthcare in Nigeria, we have one of the best systems in the world in terms of vaccine deployment.
All right. It's on that note we would like to Really appreciate Dr. Simon Agwale. The connection has done it for us.
Yes, no.
Yes, indeed. What a pity. Dr. Simon Agwale, virologist, vaccinologist, and head COVID-19 task force team on Africa Vaccines Manufacturing Initiative. He joined us via Zoom from the US. We'd like to appreciate you very much for your contribution. Dr. Shuaib, he said there's no way we can achieve herd immunity if we don't go local production of vaccines.
I'm sure that Dr. Simon Agwele, who knows his onions, did not mean that we cannot at all achieve herd immunity until we locally produce vaccines, because he's also the same person that agreed with the minister that producing vaccines locally takes time, right? I think to contextualize what he's saying, we need adequate supplies of the vaccines. Adequate supplies of the vaccines can come from the COVAX facility, from the engagement of the Nigerian government with the African Union. That is what we're trying to do. In the beginning of any pandemic, it is expected that because there's a huge demand, right, it is difficult to meet the demand for the vaccines. But over time, I'm sure in the next couple of months, because the pharmaceutical companies are increasing, they're ramping up their production, vaccines will become available, right? And once those vaccines become available, we will use them. But that does not preclude the necessity for us to begin to put in place all of the infrastructure that are necessary for us to produce our vaccines as well. This is exactly what the Honourable Minister have said. We have to ramp that up.
Sorry, if you get your first jab now, are you going to wait for the next supplies of vaccines to get your second jab?
After the first jab, there's an interval of 12 weeks. That's about 3 months before you take the second dose, right?
Will it be available for
absolutely
within the next? Will you be called? Will you call them to come back for the jab?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The arrangements that are on ground are such that we expect the next batch of vaccines by April, latest by May.
Honourable Minister, your closing thoughts briefly. We are running out of time. Your closing thoughts briefly.
Well, to urge Nigerians to have faith in the system, we have done the best that can be done under our circumstances. We have learned from the mistakes of other countries. We have observed their successes. And we have chosen the best path for our country under the circumstances that we are in. We have faith in the vaccine that we have available now and hope that we have others available very soon. I'm not worrying too much about the supply chain. I think it's going to work very well.
Dr. Tunji, briefly.
Yes, I think the important thing to part on this note is that taking the vaccine protects you from COVID-19. It is safe, it is efficacious. And any doubt that anybody has about a particular vaccine indeed also applies to the other vaccines. They're just not being promoted as we're having now. But most important for us now, until we get to herd immunity, that 70% at least of the population have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 using whichever vaccine is made available by the government. This is our best vaccine, our face masks.
Dr. Tunji Funsho, Chairman, Nigeria Polio Plus Committee, Rotary International, I would like to appreciate you. Let me also thank Dr. Faisal Shuaib, Executive Director, CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Thank you very much. And the Honorable Minister, Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire. I'd like to thank you very much, sir, for joining us in the conversation.
Thank you for the invitation.
It was a pleasure.
Well, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Do join us again tomorrow for another edition. I am Jumo Yusuf.
And I'm Claire Adilabo Abdul Razak. Always remember to stay safe, and you can connect with us and join the fight against rape and rapists. Bye-bye.